Hi, I'm Ben Murdoch, the Songwriter Coach. Now, in the last video, I introduced the sense formula. Check it out if you've not already seen this video. So the sense formula is about using a sensory experience for the listener so they feel something directly as a result of your lyrics. And the way you do this is by choosing a trigger to represent the thing you want them to feel, and then you write about it using sensory language. So in that last video, I used the example of Seal's song Kiss from a Rose and the fact he uses a rose to represent the perfect woman who saves him. Now, there are 7 senses we as humans use, 7. If you find yourself writing about sights or smells or touch or any of the other senses, then you're going to be using sensory language. Writing like this is called sensory writing. You are using senses to tell your story, or to put it another way, sensory writing uses sense to make sense. It's a really great way of connecting with the listener, really connecting. You don't need to use all 7 senses in every song, but interestingly, Ed Sheeran's song Castle on the Hill does use all 7 senses and really makes you feel something because of it. It's literally chock full of sensory experience. And I should say that the writers of Castle on the Hill are Benjamin Levin and Ed Sheeran. So now I'm going to quickly run through the 7 senses, and then we're going to dive into the song Castle on the Hill to see how Ed Sheeran's used those senses to make his lyrics really connect with us, the listener. First, the 5 primary senses, which are sight, smell, hearing, taste, and touch. So sight first. When we write lyrics, sight is often our go-to sense. What we see helps us make sense of the world around us, and it's easily relatable to people with sight. Our brain is constantly processing all of the senses, but we are mainly sight orientated. Our brain is mainly an image processor, not a word processor. This is because much of the sensory cortex is devoted to vision, and the part of the brain responsible for processing words is actually comparatively small. With this in mind, it makes sense that we use sight in our writing to make the words more powerful. The second sense, smell. Now, although smell accounts for a much smaller proportion of what's processed by the brain than sight does, for example, it's still a really, really powerful sense. The slightest smell is capable of triggering a memory from many years ago, and triggering a sensory experience for the listener is what this is all about. A smell can take us back in time and trigger memories much stronger, much more strongly than any of the other senses. Now, clearly we can't manufacture a scent or a smell in our lyric writing, but if you really think about it, we can't manufacture a sight either by words alone, or touch, or taste. We're looking to simply get inside the mind of the listener and let their mind's eye do the rest, or in this case, their mind's nose. So if smell is capable of making us time travel into our memories more so than any other sense, we really should think about using it. It's pretty cool that what you write has the power to make your listener time travel. So next is hearing. This is a crucial sense for humans. It really is the only sense that we will directly affect with our lyrics once they've been packaged up into a song which is listened to. The songs we write have the ability to calm the listener. Think of a gentle ballad or a soaring classical piece, or get a crowd of people energized and dancing, plus many grades of emotion and movement in between. Taste. I still remember tasting beer for the first time with my older brothers egging me on. I hated it, but I grimaced up at them and pretended it tasted great. So some tastes soothe us. We sometimes use food and drink to cheer us up. The sneaky chocolate bar before lunch, or that sip of wine as you put your feet up after a long, tiring day. We all have different tastes in taste, but we can all relate to a lyric which explores this sense. And the fact that I can still remember that first taste of beer like it was yesterday shows the time-traveling ability of this sense as well. Touch. Touch is a really powerful sense and can be very evocative, since touch is a way of conveying love and lust, but also anger and violence. Humans are hands-on creatures. Every day we're processing huge amounts of touch information, much of which will be linked to feelings. So the feeling of holding a child's hand as you cross the road is going to be very different from the feeling of holding the hand of your first love as a teenager. Yet both are going to be really evocative and powerful. So They are the primary senses, the 5 primary senses, but there are 2 more we haven't talked about. And let's get into them now. They are the sense of movement and the organic sense. So first, movement. This 6th sense is often called the kinesthetic sense or kinesthesia, which means the sensory perception of movement. It relates to our movement and position and is a very rich sense. The act of running for a bus is a kinesthetic event, or picking up a phone, or walking. Anything involving movement of the body will fall into this category in this sense. Use of movement in our lyrics is something which is easily understandable and easily relatable to the listener. The 7th and final sense is called the organic sense, and this is because it relates to sensations arising from the internal organs. For instance, breathing, heartbeat, stomach aches, tightness in the muscles, dizziness, sickness, they all fall into the organic sense. And it can be used to convey feelings of horror, goosebumps on the skin, they fall into that category. Love, the quickening of your heartbeat and butterflies in your stomach when you see the one that you love. Loss, the sudden drop in your abdomen when you feel that dark, empty feeling inside. Fear, the how did my bladder get so full so quick feeling, among many others. So we know words are powerful. They have the power to hurt or heal, and they're the tool of the lyricist. The lyricist chooses and structures words to transport the listener. Another way of looking at this is that the sensory language that you use in your lyrics needs to be given access in order to enter the listener. Imagine a locked door between you and a library. Now in that library are hundreds of dusty old books and files, and these are the thoughts, emotions, memories and senses of the listener. You can only get in if you have a key. The words you choose and how they're constructed help you manufacture that key, like a key cutter, to open that door for the listener. The subject and trigger is what you write about, which is important, but how you say what you say is even more important, and that's the language that you're using. A song about a subject as mundane as a telephone line repairman could turn out to be really meaningful and relatable, and it did. If you listen to the wonderful song Wichita Lineman, first recorded by Glenn Campbell, you'll find it's about a telephone line repairman from Wichita in the US. I mean, that's a pretty mundane starting point, but how the lyricist, Jimmy Webb, writes about the subject is just beautiful, and it makes the song fly. It's a golden oldie, but check it out if you don't already know it. Because once you get the key cut and open the door to the listener's library of senses and experiences, your lyrics are going to be powerful and meaningful, because the listener's going to begin rifling through old memories, experiences and feelings, and they'll be moved. They will have a sensory experience, and that's what we're looking to cause in them. So we can use all this information to simplify that sense formula I talked about in the first video even further. So the sense formula was representative trigger plus sensory language equals sensory experience. The representative trigger is what you're saying, and the sensory language is how we're saying it. So the simplified formula is what you say plus how you say it equals a sensory experience. Now let's look at all of this in action. I'm going to use a popular, successful commercial song to demonstrate how this all works. Now I could have chosen to use one song per sense, but I really wanted to show that it can be possible to include all of the 7 senses into one song. Now clearly as a caveat, it's not necessary to get all of the senses into every song. Sometimes just one of them done really well will make a song fly in the mind of the listener. So as I said before, Castle on the Hill by Ed Sheeran uses all 7 senses. First of all, I'd like to listen to the song or read through its lyrics and see if you can notice the sensory writing inside there, the senses he's used to convey his feelings to you, that key to access your library of senses. Here we go. So verse 1, and it goes like this. When I was 6 years old, I broke my leg. I was running from my brother and his friends. So running, that's using the sense of movement. And tasted the sweet perfume of the mountain grass, taste and smell, that I rolled down, movement. I was younger then, take me back to when I, and then he moves into the pre-chorus, found my heart and broke it here. So that uses the organic sense of a heartbreak. Made friends and lost them through the years. And I've not seen the roaring fields in so long. Using his sight. I know I've grown, but I can't wait to go home. So in this first verse and pre-chorus, 5 of the 7 senses have been covered already. Movement twice, taste, smell, organic and sight. That's not bad going. Sheeran only left out hearing and touch. And notice how he waited until the end of the first pre-chorus before he introduced the sense sight, that primary sight of sense of sight, choosing first to build with 4 other senses before finishing on that primary human sense. Even then, he's telling you what he's not seen in so long rather than what he has, but we get the picture, literally. He also chooses to group taste and smell together. Now these 2 senses do go hand in hand because between 75 and 95% of our taste comes from smell. Now if you don't believe me, try this experiment. Hold your nose as you put a piece of chocolate into your mouth and leave it there on your tongue, the chocolate, for a moment or 2. Now, let go of your nose and there's the chocolate taste. The chorus of Castle on the Hill is less detailed as many choruses are in songs, but there are still 3 sensory moments. So here's the first chorus. I'm on my way, driving at 90 down those country lanes. That's movement. Singing to Tiny Dancer, hearing. And I miss the way you make me feel, organic sense. And it's real, we watch the sunset over the castle on the hill. That's using sight. So still no touch at this stage, but he's loosely woven hearing into this chorus. The lyric, singing to Tiny Dancer, evokes a car stereo blasting out the Elton John classic, which he's happily singing along to, and of course hearing at the same time. It's an old song which was actually released 20 years before Ed Sheeran was even born. The lyric makes us wonder if this song had some significance to him growing up and is now taking on a strong nostalgic feeling as he's driving home. So verse 2, 15 years old and smoking hand-rolled cigarettes. That's taste and loosely touch. Running from the law through the backfields, movement. And getting drunk with my friends. That organic sense, getting drunk. Had my first kiss on a Friday night, touch. I don't reckon I did it right. But I was younger then, take me back to when. And then it moves into the second pre-chorus. We found weekend jobs when we got paid, we'd buy cheap spirits and drink them straight. That's looking at the sense of taste. Me and my friends have not thrown up in so long, organic sense. Oh, how we've grown, but I can't wait to go home. So this second verse and pre-chorus section has managed to get the sense of touch into the song finally. The first line uses it quite loosely as we see him hanging out with friends and rolling cigarettes, which is a very tactile thing for those of us who've smoked before. He then mentions his first kiss, which evokes an image of lips nervously touching on that fateful Friday night. The use of the organic sense is stronger here than in the first verse and chorus. Here, Sheeran talks of getting drunk with friends, which we all know ends badly. Suddenly the room spins and before we know it, we're doubled over a toilet vomiting, maybe not even a toilet. It's all very organic and visceral. Just in case we didn't get the sensory reference to the perils of drinking in the verse, Sheeran qualifies it in this second pre-chorus. Me and my friends have not thrown up in so long. There you go. He's rubber stamped the organic sense of being sick from alcohol. Sheeran steers clear of sensory language in the bridge, but uses a very interesting literary device which we'll cover another time. And the final chorus is a progressive repetition of the other choruses and doesn't offer up any new sensory language. So there it is, all 7 senses into one song. And the effect of this is that we experience something even if we don't share the same autobiographical experiences. So now we've charted where the sensory language came up in the song, but what we didn't do is look at how that language was written around a trigger. If you remember, the formula is representative trigger plus sensory language equals the sensory experience. Or you can say what you say plus how you say it equals sensory experience. So now let's pick out just some of the moments of the song which use sensory language and explore the triggers that were used. Let's look at verse 1. So Sheeran lets us know the time that's happening within his lifetime. He's 6 years old. He broke his leg because he was running from his brother and his brother's friends. We already know he uses movement, running, as the sense. Now, the representative triggers he chose to use here are time, events, and people. Being 6, that's the time. Chase down the hill is the event, and his brother and his brother's friends, the people. The sensory experience that might swell from this for the listener could be varied depending on their own particular experiences within their own life, their own library of senses and experiences. But it could be things like that feelings of carefree youth, the fun and fear of the chase, the relationship with siblings, or playing outside in the spring, summertime, or a childhood injury. It could be anything. He restates being younger and tasting the sweet perfume of the mountain grass which he would roll down. This builds on the childish feelings of freedom which we all yearn for as adults with more complicated lives. Here, the representative trigger is the grassy mountain. So let's look at pre-chorus 1 now. As Sheeran builds towards the chorus, there is a sense he's growing up into teenage years, as he says that he found his heart and broke it here. The representative trigger here is time and place. It's where and when he grew up, wedded to that organic sense of falling in love and then having his heart broken. He then uses the sense of sight, the yearning to see those roaring fields again, but this time as an adult. This builds on the nostalgic feeling he's been crafting all the way through so far and reuses the representative trigger of the grassy field, though this time he doesn't call it a mountain. This may be because when he was younger, this field that he's talking about he would roll down, where he broke his leg, felt like a mountain because he was smaller, but now as an adult it seems a whole lot less steep. And just to be sure we get the message, he states, "I know I've grown," and he means physically grown. He's an adult now, and the mountain is just a hill to him. So how does this make you feel, or me feel as the listener? Is there a sensory experience there, such as making you think of things you used to look at when you were a child, which seemed gigantic, and now they just feel tiny? Has it made you time travel in some way and recall something, or at the very least, made you understand exactly where Ed Sheeran's coming from? If so, it's worked. Verse 2 and pre-chorus 2. So in verse 2, Sheeran travels back in time to his teenage years and uses hand-rolled cigarettes, along with people, the friends and the girl that he's kissed, and place, the backfield, and time, that Friday night, as representative triggers. That's quite a lot. And that shows what it's like to feel as a teenager growing up and testing the physical and legal boundaries. They're getting drunk and in trouble with the law, and it's looking like there's a chance he might not get out of that cycle. In the second pre-chorus, he uses cheap spirits as the representative trigger, before jumping forward in time, right to the present, to resolve the story by letting us know that he hasn't thrown up in so long. So he's matured despite his adult misdemeanors. And similarly to the end of the first pre-chorus, where he stated that he's grown, in pre-chorus 2 he states, "Oh, how we've grown." This time he means in maturity rather than physically. He and his friends are grown-ups now, who wouldn't do the same things that they did back then anymore. But he still misses the experience it gave him. And with that comes a very stark yearning for the simpler times of his carefree, perhaps rose-tinted youth. The events and experiences of his childhood and adolescence are colourful and vivid and full of drama and first times of things like the first kiss, the first cigarette, the first drink. It's very easy to miss those times, don't you think? This song, whether you like it or not, takes you on a journey. The lyrics open the door to your library of senses and blow open the dusty old books, bringing back old memories and giving you that sensory experience that lyrics are meant to do. Thanks so much for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe and use the bell to get notifications of when my new videos are released.